We're going to begin. Today's is not such a long daf. Daf Samach Gimel, and let us start over here on daf Samach Beis. About 8 lines from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, about 9 lines from the bottom of daf Samach Beis. The Gemara says like this: Rabba said, a guy who has a partnership in a field, okay, and he owns 50% of a field, okay, and he wants to sell it to a third party. So again, the topic of the discussion tonight is, what does he mean in his language? Language could mean very funny things. Lahavdil in the Honeymooners, Ralph Cramden inherited a fortune, and it turned out a fortune was a bird. So Lahavdil over here, a guy says to somebody else, Palga de Isle Ba'ara, I'm giving you half of what I have in this land. So basically, he's selling his 50% partnership, Palga. That means he sold half the land. But if he said the following language, Palga Ba'ara de Isle, half of the land that I have, so then he's basically saying, I'm giving you half of my ownership of what I have in this land, since he owns 50%, and half of a half is a quarter. So that means he's selling to the other person, Riva, a quarter. Amalei Abaya said, Maishna Hochi. It's just a semantics of language. Here he said, Palga de Isli Ba'ara. And there, in the second version, he said, Palga Ba'ara Isle. He put the Ara in front of the word Isle. According to Abaya, it shouldn't matter. So Ishtik, Abaya, according to Abaya, no matter what language you use, you probably should get, you're selling half your entire ownership in that property, which is half half the property. Ishtik, so Rabba was quiet. Amar Abaya said, Ano Savri, I thought, Midi Ishtik, since Rabba was quiet on the matter, right? So then I thought that he was accepted, Kabule Kabbalah. He accepted what I said to him. He accepted it. V'lohi, it's not true. V'lohi, because Chazina Hani Shtar Dinafim Bimar, I observed many stars coming from the Bezdin, or from the house of Rabbah. And if it said like this, Palga the Isle Ba'ara, that I'm in Ksubehul Hachi. If it said Palga, I'm selling you half of what I have in this land, that means he's selling Palga, he's selling half the land, because that's all he owned was half the land. But if he said Parga Ba'ar the Isle, if he says in the document half the land that I have, so basically he's saying half of what I own in this property, which is a quarter, Riva. So Rabba didn't want to explain to Abaya what the difference in the language is. Another story. The Amar Rabba said, a guy gives you 3/4. He gives you 3/4 of the borders of the property. He gave you 3/4, 3 borders. But when he came to the 4th border, he said, Mitzar Ara Demine Palga. This 4th quarter will divide the property in half. So then, Palga, that means that all you get is half the property. So basically, he made 3 borders, but then the 4th border, which was non-descriptive, basically divided the property in half. Mitzar Ara Demina Psika, but if he said that 4th border will give you a piece of the property, Psika means a piece of the property, then all you bought was Tes Carbon. You only bought a little strip of the land. You didn't buy not 50% of the property. Amalei Abaya said, Maishna Hachi, Maishna Hachi. What's the difference? What's the difference between What's the difference between the two sides? Maishna Hachi, Maishna Hachi. So the Gemara says, hold on. Maishna Hachi, Maishna Hachi. So the Gemara, so Oishtik. So Rabba was quiet. Savar. So Rabba thought. Abaya thought. Minei idi palga. No matter what you said, if you said that this 4th border is going to divide the property into half, or it's going to divide the property so that you get a piece, either way you get half. Now we go to Samach Gimel Amar Alf. V'lohi, and the Gemara says this is not true. The Amar Rav Yema Bashlemya, Rav Yema Bashlemya said, L'didi meparshalei minei debaya. I was explained to me what Abaya meant. Bei Meitza Ar Demine Palga, Bei Meitza Aram Demine Psika. It doesn't matter what you say. The border will give you a half the land. This fourth border will give you a piece of the land. Will make the land peace. But if the guy added these words, these are the borders of the land, Palga, then you get half. Loy amalei ilim he didn't repeat and said these are the borders of the land. Then Tisha Kabin, you're only buying 9 kavim of the land. You're only buying a strip. So basically, what you're just learning in this piece of Gemara over here is that if it's so hard to figure out what the guy is selling, so you have to examine the language. And if you use very descriptive and repeated himself, these are the borders of the land, then he's probably giving you more than what you initially think. If you think that he's giving you a piece of land, if he said Ilim Matzranoha, then really he's selling you half the land. Let's look the Gemara, this Gemara. Pshita. So Gemara gives you, like, this would be a simple statement. The guy's on his deathbed, and he said like this. Omar, he said, Yachloik ploini ben nechasai. I want to divide with so-and-so my possessions. Well, what does yachloik mean? Divide. Does that mean he get 50% or give him a piece of the possessions, but not 50%? So when he used the word yachloik, palga, the guy gets, the recipient gets half the possessions. But if he said tru chelik leploini ben nechasai, give him a piece, not divide. Yachloik means to divide. He said chelik, give him a portion of my possessions. What does that mean? Does that mean he gets half? Or does he get half? Or does he get just like a little piece of the land? Let's say 1% of the land. What did he mean? 50% or 1%? So the Gemara is gonna come to the conclusion that you don't know. So he gets a minimum of 1/4% of the land. Since you're not sure. Omar Ravina Bar Kisi said, Toshma, come in here. The Tanya we learned in the Brisa. Someone says, same idea. Tru chelik lepaini babar. I have a pit that's full of water, and I want you to give to so and so a portion of the water of my bar. So he said chelik, which is similar to the word chelik that we learned before. So Sumchus is always like the compromising rabbi. He said, since you don't know what he meant, did he mean give him 50% of the water, or did he mean give him like 1% of the water in the bar? So ein pachas meravia, he gets a little bit more than a quarter. He gets a quarter of the water in the bar, because maybe he meant 1%, maybe he meant, so that's for certain he gets 1% of the bar, but maybe he meant 50%. So so you have the 50%, and you give him a quarter plus a little bit more, and that's how Sumchus solves the problem of the person who said chelik. If a person said, give a person a piece of my water of my bar, lechavius, to fill up his barrel, ein pachas mishminis, he gets 1/8 of the bar. He gets 1/8 of the water in the pit. If he said, give the water from my pit, lekadera, so that my friend should fill up his pot, ein pachas miyud beis, he gets 12 miyud beis from 12 parts, 1/12 of the bar. Letafiach, if it's fill up his canteen, in pachas mishisha, so he gets no less than 16. But the bottom line is, Sumcha says that because we don't know what he meant to say, he said, divide my property and my possessions and give him, so that's easier. That means you give him 50%. But if he said, through chelik, give him a portion of my possessions, so then you don't really know what he meant. Did he mean chelik could mean 50%? Or maybe chelik means a little portion, it can mean 1%. So therefore, you give him a minimum of a quarter of the possession. Tana Rabbanim, rabbis taught, Ben Levi, a Levi, Shemacha Sada Yisrael, that sold a field to a Jewish guy. So he was a Levi. Now, normally, a Levi gets 10% of the produce, called Meiserisha. So, but he stipulated in the sale of the Amaloi, and he said, Almanasha Meiserisha Shali. He says, I'm selling you the property, but anytime you're growing Meiserisha, you have to give it to me. So the Gemara says, Meiserisha Shloi, he gets to keep the Meiserisha. Only he gets to keep the Meiserisha, and not for his son. So it says not for his son, because because he made a funny type of stipulation over here. He's selling it, but you have to give me the Meiserishin. But if he said, Li ulbanai, I'm selling you my property, but you have to give me and my kids, if I die, you have to give my kids the rights to all the Meiserishin on this property. Mace, if he died, you give the kids of the seller, who's also Levium, their Meiser the im amalai, and if he stipulated in the condition, kolzman shahasadazu biyadcha, as long as you own the field, so then you have to give me the meiserishin. So what happens if the purchaser, machra, he sold it to somebody else, the chazav alakha, and then he bought it back. So during the time that he sold it to somebody else, the condition was off because he didn't own the property. Now that he bought it back, so does he have to continue the original condition of the sale? He doesn't have to give the Meiserishin anymore to the Ben Levi because he sold it to somebody in between. And during that time, the condition was null and void. So it doesn't reawaken itself. So the Gemara wants to understand the first question. How could a Levi sell a field to a Jewish person? It says that if you're going to grow Meiserishin, I get to keep it. How does that work? Why does that work? A person cannot sell or purchase something that doesn't exist. When the property was sold, there was no Meiserishin. The produce wasn't even planted to produce Meiserishin. So how could the Yisrael say, "Oh, I'm going to give you the Meiserishin, and I commit to that," when he doesn't even own Meiserishin to give to the Levi? Answers the Gemara of interesting teretz. Kivin to Amalek, since he said in the condition, Amanasha Meiserishin Shli, since he said in the condition that on the condition I'm selling you the property, unless that on the condition that the Meiserishin should be given to me. So that condition indicates that we're going to interpret it that he didn't really sell the property. What did he sell? He sold that whatever is going to be produced from this property, 90% the purchaser could keep, and 10% belongs to the Levi. In other words, he left over, let's say, the amount of land that can produce the Meiserishin. So the land still exists. He left a part of the sale of the land that could grow the Meiserishin, that the land still exists, is here. Whatever the land can produce, that he didn't sell that wasn't included in the sale. So that's not davar shloi bala olam. That's something that is existent in the world because the property exists. So Amar Shlakish, said, Zoyse Meres, I'm going to extend something from this brisa. I'm going to extend the following case. Someone sells a house to his friend, and he told him like this: when you sell a house to the friend, by the way, we learned in the Mishnah, the roof is not included. Only the house was included, but you still have a right to climb onto the roof and use it as if the roof had a fence around it. So when he sold the house to his friend, he stipulated and said, on condition that I get to keep the roof. Now that's extra. He didn't have to say that because it's obvious if you sold the house, the Mishnah said that the roof is not part of the sale. So why did he add that condition? Those extra words we have to interpret and make it work. So the Yutner Helyayin Shalai, first of all, he gets to keep the roof. But still, he would keep the roof even if the condition was not stipulated, because that's in every sale of a house. The roof is not included. So we go to Amid Beis. So Lamai Hilchasa. So then what halacha do we learn that he gets to keep the roof? So Rav Zvid said, if he wants to have beams stick out of the roof, he sold a house with the courtyard. Now he gets to keep the roof, but because he stipulated that he wants to keep the roof, unnecessarily, he didn't have to stipulate, but if he stipulated it, so he has now a right to stick beams onto the airspace of the courtyard that he sold. So basically what he was saying is that I did not sell, we'll interpret it, that he did not sell the airspace over the courtyard, which will allow him to stick beams from the roof to enter the airspace of the courtyard that he sold. That's how we'll interpret his extra verbiage that he said, that I'm not selling the roof. Rapapa said what we learned from that is that the fact that he stipulated that he's not selling the roof means like this. that without the stipulation, if the roof collapsed, then he wouldn't be able to use the roof anymore, and he has no right to build it. But if he stipulated that the roof will forever remain mine, so there we learn that if the roof collapsed, he has a right to rebuild the roof. So that's what Resh Lakish observed from the Brisa, that sometimes a person adds words unnecessarily, or we can't figure out how to make it work. We'll do what we can to make it work. So, like we see in the Brisa said, a Levi said, Amanas, that you could give me the Meiser Rishon, which we asked the question, how could such a condition be possible? It's Davar Shaloi Bala Olam. So we make it work. That means he didn't sell part of the land that's going to produce the Meiser Rishon. So Gemara understands, Bishlam Rav Zvid, understanding Rav Zvid's interpretation of Rav Shlokish's derivation. I knew that Rav Zvid said that in Rav Shlokish's case, a guy says, I'm not selling the roof, right? Which he didn't have to say that. So that's according to Rav Zvid's interpretation that he's extending the beams off the roof. So now I understand the extension, that really the extra words of I'm not on the condition that the roof remains mine, basically says that I did not sell the air rights over the courtyard next to the house. So that's how we're going to interpret that he left something for himself that he did not sell. Like we said by the Levi, he left something in the property that he did not sell to the Yisrael. El Rapapa says, what's he leaving out? According to Rapapa, it's not that he's leaving something part of the sale. It's even without the brisa, we know that din, and that if he says I want to forever keep the roof, even if it collapses, so it's not that he's not selling part of the sale, he's selling everything, but he's adding a condition. So that is not something that you extend as something that you learn from the previous brisa. So Kasha, that would be difficult to understand Rish Lakish's derivation, extension of what he learned from the brisa. Nu Gemara. Rav Dimi ben Hardari said, a man sells a house to his friend. Now imagine in those houses, they had an underwater swimming pool, or it was a water source, a spring, or whatever that you have in your house. Even if you wrote that you're selling the depth of the house, which underneath the house, and the airspace of the house, you have to also write that I'm selling you the house, the house that extends from the house itself to the earth's core, and from the height of the house to the sky, really up and down. You have to really be specified, because if you didn't say that, then my tama, what's the reason for that? The if you just sell a house, that means you didn't sell underneath the house, which gives the seller a right to dig a tunnel under your house as long as your house doesn't collapse. So you can build a Gaza tunnel under your house. So therefore, in the contract, when you're selling a house, you have to say, Ahani umkavruma, I'm selling you the depth, what's underneath the house, and the height of the house, means the airspace of the house. The airspace of the house. That's lemukna umkavrima, so that you get the depth, what's underneath the house, and what's the airspace of the house. Now that you say, I'm selling you the depth of the house from all the way to the earth's core, and the airspace of the house all the way to outer space, so then, if you say that, that gives you a right to have all the water pits and the cisterns and the the tunnels in the house, so that you get that right as well. Because then you're saying that you're selling everything that is related to the land and related in the airspace of the house up into heaven. So you really have to be more descriptive in your contract writing. So the Gemara just will conclude over here. Let me bring you a proof that if you want to sell the water pit in your house, you have to write extra verbiage in your contract. Because the Mishnah says when you sell a house, the pit and the cistern is not included in the sale. Even if you wrote in the contract, that I'm selling you the depth of the house and the airspace of the house, because perhaps the depth of the house means he's selling the basement. but it's not selling the deep water, swimming pool in the house. So even if you wrote that, it's not enough. So we see a proof that if you want to sell the swimming pool, the water source of the house, you have to write, I'm selling you the house from the depth of the house all the way to the earth's core, all the way to the Tahaim. So the Gemara says like this is the proof. If you're going to say, without writing anything in the contract, you always bought the basement of a house. So lahani umkavaruma. So if you did write umkavaruma, that should allow you to buy lebikne bar v'dus mechilas. That should give you the rights to the water. So, but the Mishnah said that that's not enough. Even if you wrote umkavaruma, you don't get the bar and the dus. So therefore is the proof that in order to buy the bar v'dus, you have to write, I'm selling you the umkavaruma from all the way to the Tahaim Ara ad Rum Raki until the heavens, till the sky. Says the Gemara, how do you know? Maybe the Mishnah is talking about the loy kasava. You didn't write the word umkavaruma, and therefore that's why you didn't get the barvados. But if you if you wrote umkavaruma, you would get the barvados. You don't have to write Tahim Rabbah. So the Gemara says, but the Mishnah does say you wrote umkavaruma, and you're still not getting the bar and the dos. So we're going to say, no, maybe this is what the Mishnah says. Even if you didn't write umkavaruma, we consider it as kavisha kasav dame, as if you wrote it, lemikne umkavaruma. So you'll get the umkavaruma, you'll get the basement and the airspace, a little bit of the airspace. But lemikne bar v'dus, if you want to get the water source, mechilas, then all you got to write, umkavaruma. If you write specifically umkavaruma, then you get it. Then you didn't get it. So you don't really have a proof from the Mishnah. But Rav Dimim and Ardoi is just made that statement. We'll continue with this tomorrow. But the bottom line of the statement is that if you're selling a house to your friend, if you want the friend to acquire the bar, the water source that you have in your private home, maybe you have an underground swimming pool, or then you have to say that you're selling the house all the way down to the earth's core. If you didn't write that, if you're just I'm selling you the house plus what's underneath the house, perhaps you're only selling the basement. Maybe you're not selling the water source. So in order to make that work, you have to be very descriptive in your contract to saying, I'm selling you the depth of the house that goes all the way to the earth's crust, all the way, and I'm selling you the height of the house all the way to outer space. Okay, we'll continue with this Gemara tomorrow.
Thank you, Baruch.
Shkaya, thank you.